Right, well, we have some breaking news on Gaza, where the UN has released a report that says Israel carried out genocidal acts, systematically targeting sexual and reproductive healthcare facilities. The report accuses Israel of using sexual violence as a war strategy. Israel's mission to the UN in Geneva described the findings as unfounded. Well, let's go to Nour, who's live for us in Amman, and she's there because the Israeli government, as well as the Palestinian Authority, have banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside of Israel, as well as the occupied territories. Now, Nour, what more do we know in terms of this report? What is in there exactly?
Well, Sarah, the report is quite extensive, and it details various forms of sexual violence and gender-based violence that Israeli forces have perpetrated against Palestinians, mostly in the Gaza Strip, but also against people detainees in the occupied West Bank. It talks about violence by Israeli occupation soldiers, but also by settlers, about the culture of impunity. One of the conclusions that it has reached, in addition to what you said about the targeting of the IVF center as a genocidal act, that Israel has basically committed these acts of sexual violence and gender-based violence in order to dominate, oppress, and destroy the Palestinian people in whole or in part, which is basically a translation of what the Genocide Convention talks about. There are very detailed accounts in this report about the measures that Israeli soldiers have taken on the ground in Gaza, how an entire clinic with more than 4,000 embryos was destroyed methodically by Israeli forces in Gaza, 1,000 sperm samples as well, in effect denying all those thousands of families the right to have a child and the clinic to be able to function again after the war. It goes into detail, Sarah, about the difficulties faced by Palestinian women under those extreme conditions of war, of starvation, of denial of medical services. How that impacts reproductive health, how this has created conditions that affect women's ability not just to bear children, but to also have healthy pregnancies and to have access to medical care. Very detailed report as well about the conditions of imprisonment, of what women went through when they were detained, whether temporarily or for prolonged periods by the Israeli soldiers, the kinds of measures of humiliation and gender-based violence that they had endured, and really stressing the fact that this was a pattern of behavior, not isolated incident, because many of the evidence that the commission relied on was readily available, published by Israeli soldiers openly on social media platforms. In many cases, the soldiers themselves, with their names quite public, shared the acts that they committed in violation of international law. And the commission, of course, accusing Israel of turning a blind eye, of excusing and even inciting this kind of gender-based violence against Palestinian women with the intention of the destruction of the Palestinian people in Gaza.
And Nour, has Israel reacted? Because in the past they have always denied any of these genocidal accusations.
Yeah, as you said, Israel has consistently denied those accusations, and this time is no difference. The Israeli representative in Geneva has categorically denied these accusations. But these are not just accusations. We have to stress that this is an extensive report by a very reputable committee that also went at length in describing the methodology that it adopted in collecting evidence. It relied not just on publicly available information, on statements made by Israeli leaders and politicians, on videos taken by Israeli soldiers, but also on testimonies, first-hand accounts from victims in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank, on partners from the human rights community who are also working on the ground. To give you an example, they described the kind of graffiti, for example, that was left by Israeli soldiers who also signed with the name of their brigade on the walls of women's shelters in Gaza that had been torn down by Israeli forces, all of them of a sexual nature, really too graphic to even read out on TV at this point. So this report is not just a report of accusations. It details the evidence that this commission has collected on these issues, which are very grave crimes under international law. And they talk about the issue of accountability, that this needs to be addressed by accountability measures. And when that is mentioned in UN circles, as we know, they're talking about the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice that has said that there is a plausible genocide happening in Gaza, and the International Criminal Court that has issued arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister and his now former Minister of Defense for crimes against humanity committed in Gaza as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Nour, detailing this latest UN report. Now,
make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.